First part of it will be leveraging your master's degree, and then the second part of it will be how to advocate for yourself. So welcome. I'm Mary Jacobs. I'm the Associate Dean of Graduate Programs in the School of Business and Technology here at St. Mary's, and I'm also the MBA Program Director. And I've been at St. Mary's for a little over 3.5 years, and prior to that, I worked at St. Kate's for 8 years, and I've been higher education for a little over 11 years. And so it's a pleasure to do this workshop, meet with you. This is the fourth time we've actually offered the workshop, and it's one of our favorite topics to talk about in career services and in conversations I personally have with my MBA students as well. I encourage you to participate. And then we've got some handouts at the end of the presentation that if you're interested, you can download those. And I would encourage you, because I think there's some good value in thinking through some of these ideas that we're going to talk about: a business narrative, goal setting, and scripting. And Ellie, thank you for co-hosting tonight. And Ellie is with our Career Services Department, as she said, and it's good to be together with you this evening. Okay. So here's what we're going to cover: 5 strategies to leverage your master's degree, how you can stand out in your organization, building a portfolio of your work, which I think is really important. And I would really like to hear back from you if you're doing it or if you're thinking about doing it, and how you can get started if you haven't already, how to apply your graduate education in your current role, a little bit about mentorship, which I think is important. That's a key topic in a lot of people's minds. And then strategies to advocate for yourself. I was a panelist in December for the Minneapolis Business Journal for a women's conference, and the discussion was around strategies to advocate for yourself. So I thought I'm going to add it to this topic on top of leveraging your master's degree. So some of these are ideas that maybe you're already doing. Some of these might be new ideas for you, but I would just encourage you, take some notes, think about what you can apply after tonight. And I would say be diligent in what you want to accomplish, because investing in your master's degree is a really big deal. It's, what's your ROI? What do you want to get out of it? Many people want to move up in their organization. Many people want to pivot in their careers and do something altogether different. And other people like to be lifelong learners, right? And getting a master's degree is important to them. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to ask you just to put in the chat which degree you're getting right now, just so we can see the mix of people that are on a program. I know we're going to have some MBA students, but I think we've got others as well. Excellent. Thank you. So we've got a good variety from different programs. So again, please feel free to ask questions. We really want this to be an interactive workshop. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So here's what I'd like you to think about. I've been doing this presentation on your strategies to leverage your master's degree, but I've also done a lot of presentations on building your confidence and selling yourself. So I want you to think about this. Do you attribute your success to external factors, spread the credit and not acknowledge your contribution, pay attention to your language? And that's really a key part of what we're going to talk about too, about what the difference is in your vocabulary and your language of finishing your master's degree. Say sorry when you aren't apologizing. I say that because I think people need to be conscious of it, because sometimes we say, oh, I'm sorry, and you really don't mean it. So if that's part of what you do and you're not even aware of it, I'd like you to be more aware of it and be mindful that you don't want to say sorry when you aren't really apologizing. And then the last one is ask permission to ask a question. So this whole idea about a seat at the table and being really mindful about how you show up at work and how you present yourself. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to pull a couple other slides in here because I think it's important to talk about, especially for some people that are in graduate school and maybe thinking about changing careers. So the imposter syndrome, I do a lot of work with women entrepreneurs, and I do a lot of work with young professionals who are really getting ready to advance in their career. And so I want to just raise some points that I'd like you to think about. First off, both men and women have it. Think about if right now you're really focusing on your career to make a career change or to advance, you wouldn't be hired or promoted if your leader didn't believe in you. The other thing I think that's really important is to think about ask for what you need. And then sometimes know that you will fail and it's okay. You're learning. I mean, failure, I've had a long career. I've been in the airline industry. I've had my own consulting practice. I've been in higher ed now for 11 years. And all of my failures, all the things that I set out to do, it actually helps me learn along the way. Like, what can I learn from an experience? So if I apply for a job that's a stretch and I don't get the job, what did I learn about how I interviewed or how I prepared for the interview or how I sold myself as the right person for a role? And my last piece of advice is give yourself grace. Things don't always work out the way that we want them to, and we have to be able to kind of forgive ourselves, right? If things don't go as according to plan, but don't give up. That's my important message to you. Please don't give up. Okay, next slide. So here I want to talk about 5 strategies to leverage your master's degree. Some of you might be doing this already, or part of this list, or none of this list. So I'd like you to just give some thought to these different ideas and see how you could incorporate them. And you don't have to wait. You can start incorporating these ideas even starting tomorrow, this week for sure. So find opportunities to talk about your program at work. I think that's really, really key. So I spent a lot of time with one-on-one meetings with my MBA students. I teach the capstone class. They're getting ready to finish their program. Now they're trying to figure out, well, what's my plan for advancement? What do I want to do next? So thinking about ways throughout the program, some of you might be brand new to your program, some of you might be in the middle or towards the end or have graduated. Think about ways and opportunities that you can talk about your program at work. I'd like you to consider that not everybody knows that you're going to graduate school. So it's incumbent upon you to make that extra effort to talk about yourself, right? And to really talk about what you're learning in your program and then try to apply it in your work setting. So ask for assignments and visibility at work. Don't assume, ask for that opportunity. I know oftentimes people think, well, they should know what I'm doing. They know that I'm good at what I do. But if you're not responsible, right, for controlling what you're wanting from your work, right, from your leader or from your organization, from the department that you work for. So be really, really mindful about asking for those opportunities for assignments. And best that you can, try to apply it, right, to the work that you're doing in your program, in the curriculum, what you're learning, how that makes a connection to the work, the curriculum and the program to what you're doing in your current job. Track your work projects. We're going to talk in a couple slides too about your portfolio and the importance of keeping a portfolio. Make sure that you're keeping track along the way. And I'm going to recommend, even if it's just a notebook, right, that you're jotting down information. This is what I worked on today. And you want it to be significant and meaningful. You don't want to track everything that you do. Some of you probably have regular one-on-one meetings with your direct supervisor, but some of you may not. Maybe you're doing annual performance reviews and not a lot in between. So think about, could you remember what you worked on 3 weeks ago, even much less 3 months ago? So that's why I want really for you to think about, how do you track your projects and how do you make sure that you're accountable and displaying the work that you're doing, the expertise that you're developing in your master's program. Asking for a raise or promotion, okay? This is going to be hard for some of you, or maybe even all of you on this call right now, but you're investing in a master's degree, right? Your goal is to advance in your career or possibly pivot in your career. So again, don't make the assumption that people know that you're in graduate school. So be sure to apply for a job or to ask for a raise, but back that up, right? Demonstrate the work that you're doing, the credibility, the experience that you have along the way. And then the last thing I would say is use LinkedIn in your email signature if you're not doing that already. I think that's really important. So if you are a current graduate student, let's say you're getting a master's in counseling, make sure that that's on your signature in LinkedIn, and that might be also something you want to put in your email signature. I can tell you a number of the MBA students, as soon as they graduate, they make sure that they update MBA in their LinkedIn profile. I literally see that within 24, 48 hours. So how do you express and then display the fact that you're in school right now? Is you have to make sure that you're putting it right in public places. So LinkedIn, probably many of you know this, but that's where recruiters are looking for candidates, right? So if you're specifically interested in doing something different or advancing in your career, make sure that your LinkedIn profile is updated And again, I would put graduate student and name the program. Okay, next slide. So how do you stand out in your organization? And this is again going to be incumbent upon you. Find those opportunities for visibility. Apply for positions with your new degree. Okay, so don't expect that your company is going to come to you and say you're ready for this promotion, right? This director level job or whatever job you're interested in because you're in graduate school. You're going to have to go and find these opportunities, and then you're going to have to demonstrate your competency, right, and build your credibility with your new credential. So take your seat at that table. That picture that I displayed in the front part of the presentation, I want you to just be really mindful. Many of you are probably back to work or hybrid, and so you're, the 5 years post-COVID, right? We're all working from home. Those days are not as readily available as they used to be. So I want you to think about what is your seat at the table. Show up to a meeting early, sit at the table. Some of you may be inclined to be in the peripheral, right, or not participate or say too much, even on Zoom calls where it's easy to blend in to a mixed Zoom call. Find ways that you can stand out, ask good questions, talk about the work that you're doing in your program, but find ways to take your seat at the table. And I want to remind you that informal leadership is just as important as formal leadership. For those of you that might be aspiring to take on a leadership role at your organization, think about the way that you're impacting colleagues, the work that you do at your organization, or potentially if you're even volunteering, right? I think that's really important because informal leadership matters. You might be able to influence people, right? They might respect you, they may look up to you. You might be able to have somebody do some kind of work that they wouldn't do otherwise because you've encouraged them. So for those of you in particular who are getting ready to take on a leadership role, if you're not currently in a leadership role, think about how you accumulate that experience, the things that you've been doing informally in your own organization. The other thing is act the part, right? If you want to be a leader, you need to act like a leader, right? You need to dress the part, dress for success. So some of you might work in informal work environments where it's casual every day. So how do you amp up, right? And that might be a little bit more of business casual. So maybe formal isn't the right thing to do for your work environment, but maybe that business casual makes you separated, makes you look a little bit different, right? And how you act the part of being a leader. Okay, next slide. So here I want you to think about applying your graduate work. So some of you are in probably 10 to 12 classes in your curriculum, right? You're not going to be able to apply all 10 or 12. That's not realistic. What you can do is isolate some key courses that really matter that are meaningful for your work. So I would focus on 2 to 3 classes, and then I would really try to incorporate the curriculum, the things that you're learning into the work environment. So use a work-based project for assignment. Probably many of you have been doing that in your graduate program anyways, but if you haven't been, think about the application of something that you're learning in your program and how you can apply that to the work that you do in your work life, in your work experience. And then the other thing is too, to make sure that you present it to your leadership, okay? That assumption that people know what's going on, they don't. You're busy, your leadership is busy, your colleagues are busy. So you've got to be really mindful of what you can do to stand out and talk about the work that you're doing, the learning, the application of what's happening in your graduate program and how it's making a difference for you. So think about how are you acting more strategically? How are you articulating that you think differently, that you've got critical thinking skills, that you've got better writing skills, that you've got presentation skills, leadership skills, teamwork, all that's what you're learning right now. It doesn't matter what degree program you're in, there's the application right across different master's programs. So use the language that matters and the vocabulary in your organization, right? Talk about that. That's one of the things that I've really learned from my grad students in the MBA program. They talk about the language and the vocabulary change from the application of what they're learning in their graduate program. So think about the difference. If you're in the MSW program, any one of our master's program, an education program, there are things that you're learning from that you're different today because you're a graduate student or a recent graduate right? That you have a different language, you have a different position. The way that you look at work is differently because of the application of the work that you've been doing in your curriculum. So the capstone class is probably one of the very best opportunities throughout your program. If you're doing a capstone, most of you, I'm assuming, are going to be doing a capstone paper. And thinking about, is there a work application right to your capstone project? So I'm going to use an example from the MBA program. I have a number of graduates that work at, current students and graduates that work at Mayo Clinic. About a year or so ago, one of my students was very interested in working in a different department at Mayo Clinic, and he used his capstone project as an opportunity to demonstrate that he was ready because of his MBA to take on new responsibility. So he was very intentional about choosing a project that would build visibility for himself. He went and he talked to different people in this new department that he was interested in working for. He did informational interviews. He gathered the evidence. And when he wrote his 30-page capstone paper, he presented the findings of his capstone paper. And he was successful in being able to leverage his capstone paper, his MBA degree, to get a new position at Mayo Clinic. But I like that example because he was very intentional about how it could make a difference for what his career goals were. So think about that too. Is there something in your program? It could be in a class you're in right now, but it could also be in your capstone class. But it's being very intentional, right, about how you can apply, how you can stand out, and use that as an opportunity to really to leverage and open doors for you in your career. Next slide. Okay, I mentioned earlier about building a portfolio. So make sure, here's one of my key pieces of advice that I tell people as well. Make sure that you clearly understand what matters to the organization that you work for. Is it new product launches? Is it new clients that you're taking on as a social work? Is it being able to step if you're an educator? What really matters to the organization? And then how do you align with that? And if it's not clear to you what the priorities are of the organization, please ask the question, right? Get the clarification. Don't make any assumptions. So it's incumbent upon you, right, to take that extra step, to find those opportunities to stand out and be more visible. I mentioned to you a bit ago, tracking work I think is really, really important. And I'm going to recommend that you update it weekly because I think that's one of those best practices that can make a really positive difference. Because, again, some of you might be meeting regularly with your leaders, but some of you might be meeting once or twice a year, and you might have informal meetings. What I'm going to make a recommendation to you is in this portfolio of work that you're now tracking, is that you ask for a regular meeting with your supervisor. And then you can sit down and review the kind of work that you've done and the application of the work. And this is how you get an opportunity to incorporate your graduate program and how you think as a graduate student and how that's going to make a difference in the relevance in the kind of work that you do. So schedule a meeting to review your work and then again, keep track of your portfolio of work weekly. I don't know about you, but I probably couldn't tell you what I did 3 weeks ago. So much has happened in between. So jotting it down, it could be an actual physical portfolio that you're keeping copies of, but it could be something online in your email that you're just putting things into a folder that you're keeping track of. Could be in a notebook, but whatever works best for you. My advice to you is just to be mindful of keeping track of it, right? And then being able to talk about it, being mindful of actually scheduling a meeting and talking about your results. Okay, next slide. So I want to spend just a couple minutes on talking about mentors because this is a conversation that comes up a lot when I'm talking to my graduate students. So mentors can be both internal and external. Some organizations have formal mentoring programs and some don't. And some people are part of a formal mentoring program and others are wondering, well, how do I get inside of it, right? How do I get to be a mentee formally? Because that can make a difference if you have a sponsor that can help you in your career, right? Can really push for you to be an advocate for you to move up in your career. So I would say look for both internal and external, but internal certainly if it's someone that's going to make a difference in your career. But outside of your work group, someone that's objective might be able to give you a perspective that's separate from a colleague that you work side by side with that has kind of the same issues, that agrees or disagrees with you. Like that external mindset might be really beneficial to you. When you're in a mentoring relationship and you're setting up this mentor, if you're going to say, Sue Smith, John Smith, I'd like you to be my mentor. Just think about your approach and think about what you want from them, right? So in this mentoring relationship, you want to ask for what you need from them. Be very clear. Would you like to meet with them once a month? Do you want to meet with them once a quarter? Do you want to meet with them in person or a Zoom call is just fine? But think about what are your goals of this mentoring relationship? So Do you want access to their professional network that they could introduce you to people that could make a difference in your career, right? Do you want them to take a look at your resume? Do you want them to be a reference for you? So have in mind what your goals are in a mentoring relationship, and then kind of lay that out, if you will, when you're asking someone to mentor you, okay? And having more than one mentor is perfectly fine. I'm right now in a formal mentor relationship as a mentor. This is my second year for a nonprofit that I'm on the board with. And I want to just give you an example. Both of my experiences with these two women, they are exceptionally organized. They prepare agendas. We set up meetings in advance. We know what our goal of the meetings are. And we have very productive time together. And I want you to think about that too. Like, how can you have a really productive mentor meeting? So schedule a time at their convenience. Here's my advice to you too. If you're a morning person like I am, I would do my very best to try to offer, Tuesday, Wednesday, 30 of this week between 9 and 10 or over the lunch hour. Make a suggestion, right? If you know that you're better in the morning than you are in the afternoon, then do your very best to try to schedule something that works, kind of your best time of day for you to be the most productive, your mind's the clearest. That doesn't always work. Then you want to be flexible, right? And work with the schedule of the person that you are asking to be a mentor. I would say prepare an agenda. I'm not saying you need to pull out an agenda, but for you, for your preparation in advance to make sure that you have objectives for the call, right? And that you cover what matters to you, call, or could be an in-person meeting, whatever that situation will be in terms of how you meet and mentor. I would send them your resume in advance so they can learn more about your background. I would also bring a copy of your resume. Here's just a protocol thing to think about. If you've invited someone out to coffee, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you should expect to pay. They may insist on paying, and that's perfectly fine, but you should make that overture to pay since you've extended the invitation. Make sure you follow up with a thank you. I would send both an email and then I would also write a thank you card. That's very powerful. And I would send a thank you email the day of your meeting so that they get it within hours after meeting with you. And then the last piece of advice is remember that it's flattering, right? Anytime someone asks us to be a mentor or do an informational interview, just remember that it's flattering and that you will get benefit, but that person who will mentor you will also have benefit. I haven't encountered a mentor today that doesn't appreciate that opportunity to share some wisdom or share their insights or their experience. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to transition now into advocating for yourself, and we're almost done with this formal presentation. So I'd really enjoy if you'd like to ask some questions, if you put them in the chat, or you want to come on and ask questions. But challenges in advocating for yourself, confident that you are ready for the position, right? So it's a lot easier to advocate for somebody else than it is to advocate for yourself. So now when you think of a new role, whether it's at your own company or a new role outside of your organization, you've got to build your confidence that you're ready for this position. So think about the perception of your abilities and your readiness. Make sure you keep your resume updated. I think that's really important in real time, that it matches what your job responsibility is and also what your graduate program is. Asking for more money, probably one of the hardest things to do. I'm going to talk to you in a moment here about a slide about negotiating strategies. Trust me, it's kind of that gulp moment that most people have when they're asking for money. I totally get that. But think about how you can push yourself outside of your comfort zone. And then here's one thing that we think about too when you're advocating for yourself. Here's an important piece of advice. Know that what matters to your leadership and the organization and equating it to the priorities and the bottom line. Know what really does matter to your organization, right? So think about your success, your contribution, and how you can articulate the value that you bring to the organization. But it's really key that you're aligned with what matters to the organization. So make sure you check that you're on the right track with what you think the priorities are of the organization and the person that you work for. Okay. So, realities of advocating for yourself, it's awkward and uncomfortable for most people. It is for me. I have done a far better job in the second part of my career of advocating for myself than I did in the front end of my career. Partially that's maturity and age because I've had more experience. Um, I said this to you a moment ago. It's easier to sell someone else than it is to sell and promote yourself. I do a lot of work with women entrepreneurs who are in mid-career that are just starting to start their own businesses, and they have to sell themselves, right? They have to sell their credentials and their background. Oh, they hate it. And it's consistent. I have yet to have found a woman that I've worked with, and I've worked with hundreds of women over the last 15, 16 years. Not a one of them, many of them who are exceptionally credentialed, likes to talk about themselves. So if that feels awkward for you, just know that you're in good company. But you've got to be really mindful of what you can do to be prepared and to demonstrate why you're the right person for a job. What are the things that make you stand out as a candidate? Here's the other thing that people assume that your good work will speak for itself. Well, it won't by itself, right? Not that people don't recognize a stellar employee and the good work that you're producing in your job, but you've got to take that extra effort and make that extra effort really to talk about your success to help separate you from the competition, right? Why are you an exceptional employee? And don't just assume that because you're doing good work and you get good performance reviews that everybody's on the same page and everybody understands the great work that you're doing consistently. Okay, so what steps should someone take to prepare for a negotiation about compensation or career advancement? And again, it gets back to I get the awkwardness of it. So here are some things in preparation that I'd like you to think about. Know the responsibilities of the job and the expectations. Be very clear about what the job is. So it could be an internal position that you're applying for, or it could be external. You see something on Indeed.com, something on LinkedIn. Do as much research, as you can, so that you're fully prepared and you understand the expectations and what are they looking for job requirements in the job description, right? What really matters, what stands out? Do your homework, do your research, talk to people that work at that organization if you can. Sometimes it's confidential, you don't want others to know that you're looking for a job, but be as prepared as you can because that's how you're going to set yourself up for success. Know the measurement of success, right? What are they looking for? So if they want you to be the director of sales and they want you to bring in 50 new customers in the first 6 months on the job, understand really what they're looking for and think about how you can tailor the work that you've done, your background, your success to what matters to the organization that's hiring. Know your competition. Your competition could be 6 people that you work with in a department, plus a whole bunch of external. So do your very best to understand who's your competition. What sets you apart from what others? If you have insight, especially if it's an internal job, and you know who your competition is in your own department or another department, know how you match, right, against that other person or those other people, plural, and about why you are the right person for that job. So you've got to be prepared to really sell yourself. And that's incumbent upon you. And this kind of circles back this whole idea about tracking and really keeping a log of your portfolio of the work that you've done, right? And again, tying it to what the priorities are of the organization. Think about how you are going to describe why you're the right person for the job. So there's an exercise we're going to get to in a minute here about scripting. This is really where you're going to start selling yourself. And you've got to really line up your history, your success. You've got to sell yourself. Now you've got this extra master's credential that will separate you from some of your competition, right? So you've got to make sure that you're talking about getting a master's degree is a big deal, okay? You just want to make sure that people understand the value of your education on top of you understanding the value of the education. And when you're applying for positions, when you're in an interview, it could be one-on-one, it could be group interviews, you've got to think about, in addition to the work experience, how do you then tie all that into your new master's degree and the curriculum in your program? Speak the language. I've talked about that a couple times. I think it's really important to understand the language of the organization that you work for. And this portfolio that I've been talking about, I would keep it as recent, a year or two. You certainly can go beyond that. And I'd like you to think about this as a best practice takeaway for today is keeping track in a portfolio. It just helps prepare you for interviews. And some of these will be blind jobs that you're applying for that you don't have a connection that someone can't internally advocate for you, right? But other positions might be an internal position or someone knows, works a friend, colleague works at a different company and they can help advocate for you. So you're probably going to have everything in between, right? Internal, external, kind of a blind application. So you really think about what are the ways that you can stand out in this application process. And that's really where that master's degree will make a difference for you. Okay, so strategies for negotiating for a raise or promotion. Do your homework. Really, really understand as best you can about the requirements, understand the salary range and the job requirements. I would far rather have you think about if the job range, let's just say, is 85 to 100,000. You're like, you know what? I'm making 80,000 right now. I'd be happy with 85,000. I'd far rather have you think about trying to get 100,000 and being able to negotiate in that range versus if you go low and they're thrilled to have you coming in at a lower salary requirement. So when they give a range, go for the top of the range, and it probably gives you some wiggle room then to negotiate. Again, tie your work experience to your past performance and your success. We've talked multiple times about don't assume people know about your work. You know what? You've got to do that for yourself. You've got to stand out, advocate for yourself. Tie your results to your metrics, know what matters to the organization that you work for. And here's my last piece of advice is be bold. No is not the end of the world. When you don't get a job or if something happens along the way and you're advocating for yourself, every experience is a learning experience. And I'm going to just really push you to think about what can I do outside of my comfort zone on a regular basis to make a difference so that you get to where you want to be in your career because you're investing right now in your education. You've got an excellent credential that's behind you. You want to make sure that you get the best ROI for yourself for the investment, but also for the organization that you aspire to work for. And with that, that's the formal part of it. Ellie, we've got, oh, let's go back to handouts. Thank you. So we've got 3 handouts for you, and I'm going to ask you, we're just going to put these in the chat that you can download. These are exercises that I've developed over the years that I think are, I believe in doing the work, just like you've been in grad school and you're doing the work right in your program. I believe that writing, so pen to paper, I think makes a difference. So business narrative exercise, it talks about your 3 E's, and that's the best way when I built out these exercises a few years ago to make it memorable, thinking about your experience, your expertise, and now in your case, your education. So this exercise, just in some ways it mirrors your resume, but it's a good way to think about how you present yourself, how you package you are as a professional, right? And how you prepare when you're having meetings, interviews, public speaking, whatever that might be. It's a really good way for you to think about how you're packaging yourself and presenting yourself. I've got an exercise in here called 3 Goals in 30 Days. I'd like you to think about, and even tonight, I would love for you, all of you, to think about what are 3 stretch goals in the next 30 days that you could push yourself out of your comfort zone. So it could be asking for a mentor meeting. It could be asking for an information interview. It could be applying for jobs that feels like way out of my range. I want you to think about how can you stretch yourself in the next 30 days. And then I'd like you to think about the next 30 days and the next 30 days to be constantly, we're coming up on March 1st next week. Think about each month at the beginning of a month. What are some things that I could do that stretches yourself, right? And 3 goals that you want to accomplish at the end of the month. And I'd like to think about who can hold you accountable and who in your network can help you accomplish your goals. And then the last thing is a scripting exercise to get you ready for asking for more responsibility, visibility, preparing for promotion, and preparing for performance reviews. So I've been teaching for a very long time, and I have been leading workshops and do a lot of consulting one-on-one. These are the kinds of exercises, especially my workshops, I think that really make a difference. And I'm going to really strongly suggest to you that you take some time to do these um, worksheets because I think they're going to help you prepare for the goals. The fact that you came tonight and joined us here at St. Mary's means that what you want to accomplish is important to you. And I'm hopeful that you've got some additional ideas and strategies that you can incorporate this week. No reason to wait, right? Just think about not everything is going to be new and fresh to you, but hopefully there's some ideas in the presentation, in the remarks that resonate with you that think, I can do that and I can do that starting tomorrow. Okay, that is the end of formal presentation, and I'd like to open up if there's any questions or comments that people have.